Empire. Gaming is advancing.
Parlay presentation combined with, that kind of live prop betting, on key US sports like NBA, and surface supplementary data to back up, those betting opportunities in terms of, game statistics, player statistics, streaming.
That's Paddy Casey, co-founder of The Unit, who is building software for the latest innovation in iGaming and gambling. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. It has now been 5 years since the Supreme Court allowed states to decide for themselves if they wanted to legalize sports gambling. In some places it remains illegal, and in others it's still nascent. And our conversations here often show that American bettors have different desires in their platforms than a more mature market like Europe. Our guest this week is Paddy Casey. He's the co-founder of The Unit, which is a software development company based in Ireland, which builds innovative products and solutions for the sports betting and iGaming sector. We're going to talk about betting in Europe and betting in the U.S. markets and see where the differences lie. Hi, Paddy. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Bram. Thanks for having me on.
Let's talk a little bit about The Unit first. What do you guys do?
So The Unit, we've been around since 2017, working predominantly in regulated markets in Europe, so Ireland, the UK, some European countries, and I suppose our business is split into two avenues. So one, digital marketing. So we have an SEO team, social media management team who manage PPC across Google and Microsoft Ads, and then we have our product development team, and that's managed out of Ireland, and we have, I think, maybe 42 developers between the Ukraine and Chisinau in Republic of Moldova. So working on lots of cool stuff at the moment, and clients popping up from, we're doing some work in South Africa, we're doing some work in Canada, North America, different states around the US, Ireland, the UK, and some in Africa as well. So whirlwind couple of years, but grateful to be working with some really good customers.
I don't want to get off topic, but since you did mention you have a number of programmers in Ukraine, has it been difficult to do work? What is happening in that part of the world right now?
Yeah, I mean, the disruption, in fairness, has been limited. For example, if we're doing some demos or retrospectives or planning sessions, there have been occasions when some guys haven't been able to join calls because they might be in a bunker, for example. Working closely with our colleagues there kind of really brings home how serious that situation is there, and can be. We see it on the news and stuff, and we just we make assumptions or whatever. But those guys are fantastic. Their work ethic is incredible. Their approach to life is incredible. And even before we set up The Unit, we'd worked with Ukrainian programmers for since 2009 in Kiev and Lviv on the west of Ukraine, and just love working with Ukrainian people. We'll hopefully, when things kind of settle down there, we'll open an office there, and we'll continue to support our colleagues there.
Okay. All right. Let's get back into the software development for gambling and iGaming. Just broadly, can you kind of talk about the maturity of the European markets and what customers want there versus the nascency of the United States market? You already mentioned state to state here, and what you're seeing customers and bettors wanting here.
Yeah, so I suppose European market, particularly the United Kingdom, and like I said, we're based in Ireland, but we've kind of followed the kind of UK model, has and I think when you look at when sports betting brands had launched in the US, they've kind of followed, from a technical and probably design perspective, in order to get the product live following the repeal 5 years ago. I think we're coming up to the fifth anniversary now. It's very much been a European approach to getting product live, and I'm not sure that that will continue to work in the US, for example. My view would be that it's obviously highly competitive on a state by state basis, and in small province like states, so the pool of potential customers is quite small, so that'll lead to higher acquisition costs, and I think US customers will demand cleaner, quicker purchase paths. So that purchase path being registration, deposit, withdrawal, wagering or placing a bet, and less of what Europeans are used to. I think what we're used to here is, very traditional navigation, very traditional, placing bets and making wagers on casino and stuff. So I think certainly with the States and those customers becoming more educated, I think their loyalty will be matched to the product experience and the engagement, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And I think fans in general, sports fans, and there's a nice tie-in with sports and betting and stuff, but they don't just want to place their bets and sit back. They want to be part of the event, especially with younger fans who might be getting their sports information exclusively on social media, for example, on platforms like TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and podcasts like this. So I think certainly in the US, if betting companies are to thrive in that new environment where millennial sports fans are used to dual screening, well then they're going to have to adapt to the demands, to new norms in terms of where younger fans are getting information from, and that's going to lead into their vision for their product and marketing, or they'll risk losing out. Especially going back to the highly competitive state by state case, where if you look at New Jersey, for example, there's maybe 55 or 60 operators. I mean, there's no way that is sustainable. So I think product will be a key differentiator for brands, especially for challenger brands outside of your FanDuel, your BetMGM, your DraftKings.
Okay. So what about the product itself do you see is going to need to change to be competitive?
I think so. This is kind of, and goes back to, I suppose, how we set up the unit, because we've come from, I suppose, operator backgrounds in Europe. So all of our team in Ireland, we've worked in commercial marketing and product roles for several of the tier one European bookmakers, and it's kind of, I always say it's kind of three pronged, and I think customer engagement, I think, is going to be absolutely crucial. I think then dotted line lead into personalization of a product, and then the kind of the wider product, like we were saying, like dual screening. So that kind of, I suppose, second screen experience. And I don't think you can do that without listening to customers, and particularly from a customer engagement. So if we take a step back for a sec, right? I think BetConstruct, for example, they mentioned recently in a big press release that acquiring customers is easy, and that's probably is easy in terms of the general life cycle of a player in the kind of betting and iGaming space. And I think operators, they need to think of their bettors and their customers as stakeholders, and I think the best operators will listen to them being customers, listen to their problems and solve them, which will predominantly be product and UX related, and then they'll capitalize on opportunities presented by those problems. So if you look at, so state launches are slowing down across the US. So that's going to, I think operators will now need to look at how to improve the product to match the US audience, so less what Europeans are used to. Um, the swelled operator numbers in states versus the number of potential customers in those states, I think will lead to operators looking at customer engagement and really um, and really and looking at where, again, going back to the stakeholder piece, where bettors are having issues, and increasing engagement there will lead to, we think, higher retention rates, and that lead to greater lifetime value and more bang for the operator buck. So kind of, we like to call it three prongs. So customer engagement, personalization, and then that product piece. So I would think certainly dual screening in terms of, I think upwards of 70% of millennial sports fans are dual screening while they're watching live sports. So I think fans and bettors want to be immersed in the action, and if operators can find a way of presenting that in a single second screen, dual screen experience, I think that's where the real winners will be. But I don't think they can do that without listening to their customers at the very heart of that.
Let me ask you about betting options. We've had a number of people on as the markets are growing here in the United States, and that the bettor may be different here than it is in Europe based on fantasy sports, daily fantasy options, a preference for parlays here, and that the menu of options in the United States is different and large, and oftentimes not very easy to navigate because of how large it is. Does that kind of all ring true to you?
Absolutely, and I think even in Europe, so I think like how products are presented in the European model, and that's what we see in the States. And there's some nice innovation pieces and companies that we're talking. The VoxBet, for example, being one, who are trying to bring kind of voice technology to the market. So completely agree with all of those bits, and I think finding a way to surface, parlays in particular, and FanDuel have been doing some really good work there, and bringing that, if you could surface, parlay presentation combined with that kind of live prop betting, on key US sports like NBA, and surface supplementary data to back up those betting opportunities in terms of game statistics, player statistics, streaming. I think that would be. I would see a case for Europeans maybe looking at replicating what the American market is doing and will do, and I think that will probably come in the next 5 or 10 years, where to get the products live and states live in the US, states and brands have just used what Europeans have used, and I think as things start to change in the US in terms of product innovation, we'll see that replicated in Europe, I think.
When you talk about personalization, what do you mean by that? Like content delivery, or like how are you viewing personalization in betting opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. It's amazing, right? Because we speak with scores of operators on a monthly basis on both sides of the Atlantic, and one thing that quite a lot of them struggle with is the marketing technology, right? So tracking marketing spend behavior, and whether the player behavior is, issues with product and navigation, heat maps where users might fall off the journey or fall out of the funnel, what we're kind of saying is, make data-driven decisions. So and then refine that, rinse that, repeat that. And I think the more educated and loyal bettors, I think, will eventually demand personalized experiences based on their behavior, and that kind of ties into the dual screening piece that we just spoke about, and fans getting information from social sites. So, I think based on what fans want and what players want, and I think they will want to feel valued and appreciated, and more than just a better. And I think better product experience. So that's betting opportunities, content if it's available, and personalize that at a user level can help meet the expectation where bettors feel more than just a better. That kind of ties in as well with that bet construct comment that acquiring players is the easy part of the journey. I mean, retention now is where you're going to see a lot of focus, and that will be on marketing tech, marketing spend. You might see less of the Jamie Foxxes with BetMGM, for example, and maybe more focus on tracking and understanding where bettors are potentially having issues with the product, and the ability to customize, I think, is going to be crucial. So it's kind of personalized retention, I think, will be crucial for every operator as the cost of acquisition continues probably to increase.
Okay, let's talk about iGaming for a moment. I want to ask just a broad question about it. Like, where is it right now, and where is it going in the next 2, 5, 10 years?
Good question. I think the last time of looking, I think iGaming was regulating live in I think 5 states. I think there's a number of interesting bills, on a state-by-state basis now to look at kind of regulation in different states. And I think those bills on a state-by-state basis would be interesting. I think as the online sportsbook share shrinks on a state-by-state basis, I think operators, and going back to the challenger brands, I think they'll start to prioritize iGaming, and that will feed into kind of lobbying. I think that there's probably a little bit of reluctance maybe at this point in terms of with responsibility and problem gambling and that type of stuff. So I get why maybe iGaming hasn't taken off as quickly as kind of sports books. But I would think that certainly in the next 5 years, we'll see probably between 15 and 20 states would have maybe legalized iGaming.
Okay. Last thing. When you're talking to partners, and specifically over here, since the majority of our audience is in the United States, what are they looking for? What do they want to build?
It's a combination, actually. I mean, we're having some really cool conversations around, innovative products at the moment. So, that can be anything from like an in-play scoreboard for a sportsbook to, little, we call them like spinny wheels, which are essentially like really, really cool casino style retention products from scratch cards to pinball. And so I think experience in the marketing product, marketing tech side of kind of sportsbook and iGaming space is something that a lot of operators in the States are looking for currently. And yeah, it's just experience in the industry. And I think, that will organically happen in the States, over the next couple of years. It's probably a bit of a brain drain, I think, maybe in Europe. I think a lot of Europeans had hoped for California to be legalized so they could go and live over there for a while and enjoy the nice weather and all that kind of stuff. But certainly, sector experience is key across, acquiring and retaining players, but also experience in developing developing product, and whether that's run of the mill, standard sportsbook and casino products, or innovation pieces. So a broad spectrum really of of the softer side, which we would say is marketing and design, and then the more technical side from engineering and product process.
Paddy Casey is the co-founder of The Unit. Thank you so much for joining us. On the next Future Sport podcast, we'll catch up with the founder of the American Cornhole League, Stacey Moore.
Oh, it's been amazing. We've continued to be on a high growth path. I believe since we last talked, we made our Super Bowl event. That was probably a one-time event, I believe, when we first talked, and now it's a full-blown series with 8 events plus a championship event.
Cornhole is growing considerably, and we find out what expansion looks like and how technology plays a role in it. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.